All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. My name is David Walters. I'm the College Career Advisor over at College Park High School. We're joined, obviously, with Ms. Presnick as well from Northgate. Originally, this was going to be a presentation by Tim, the finance guy, but we did have a change of plans here, and Tim is retiring, so we're going to offer him the best wishes in that endeavor. But we are ecstatic that you're able to join us tonight as we talk about the college financial aid process. So to kind of show you what we're going to talk about, we're going to move on to the next slide. And really, when you think about college, shy of your house, it's really one of the biggest investments you're really going to make. So we're going to kind of talk about what the financial aid is, what that FAFSA Dream Act application looks like, what happens next after that. And then when you get that financial aid letter, what do you do with that? How do you interpret that? And what does that really mean? And of course, if there's alternative scholarships as well. And like I said, we are recording this, so we're going to post it and have links as well. And you'll see throughout, there's a couple of links there on the bottom for additional information, but this will be made available to you as we go forward as well. So if we kind of move on to the next slide. All right, so what is financial aid? Like I said, college is a huge investment, very expensive. So the financial aid piece is how do you pay for that experience? So the biggest component really is going to come from that FAFSA California Dream Act. That's where the bulk of the money is going to come from. But when you get that financial aid, like what is that money paying for? That's kind of what we're going to explore with here a little bit. So it may be you're applying to a 2-year school, a 4-year school, a vocational school. All of those schools have different applications and can use that financial aid piece as well too. And of course, when you think of college, you're thinking of those tuition, you're thinking the room and board. Those are the big numbers that you're going to think about. But there's a lot of incidental courses that come with it as well. There's lab fees, there's textbooks, there's transportation, there's additional housing issues. So all of that has to kind of be put into that equation because remember, you're going to be there 4 or 5 years. So you really want to have a good picture of what that's going to look like and how you're going to pay for that and sustain that over that time. So really, we're going to break it down into 3 different categories. And I'll go into each one a little bit more. And forgive me here, I am colorblind, but you see not all financial aid is made equal. And you see there's a green, a yellow, and a red. And the reason that is there's the good versus the not as good, but often necessary. So really what you're always striving for is that gift aid. And we'll talk about that in a second. But again, that's going to be that free money. That's the money you don't have to repay. That's always the goal. I'm going to jump down to the bottom. Loans, often a necessity because the university is so expensive. But you try to minimize that as much as possible. And we'll discuss that as work. And of course, it's work and work study. And we'll kind of talk about what that looks like going forward as well, too. So gift aid, again, this is really what you're looking for. This is the money that you don't have to repay. This is what you're striving to make as much as you can. It comes mostly in the form of scholarships and grants. It's going to be funded from the federal government, from the state government, sometimes from the college itself, some endowments, from alumni associations, private companies. But again, this pool of money is really is what you're striving to attain. Work aid, it's a little bit different when we talk about work. Again, it becomes part of your financial aid package. And when you're doing a FAFSA application, you kind of indicate that you're interested in that. But do kind of understand and take into consideration that this is not like a one-time money that's coming up ahead. This is work that's involved for the student in their college experience. There are benefits to doing this versus working in an outside area because there might be more flexibility with the course of study, things of that nature, or there might be links to the student's course of study, so it might be a little bit more applicable. But again, it's not going to be like an initial pool of money that's going from the beginning. It is work, it is time that's involved, so it's a great component, but it's a little bit different than the other ones. And if this is something the student is interested in too, you definitely want to be sure to kind of check it out with the university and their financial aid offices are to see if they participate, what kind of programs they offer within it. But again, just one of the 3 variables that we're looking at. So again, like I said, the work that you definitely want to check within the university, see what programs are being offered and see if it's applicable to you. Just another avenue to kind of pay for that college experience. And then our next piece is going to be the loans. Again, you try to minimize this as much as possible, but it has become a necessity for a lot of people just because the university experience is expensive. And that's kind of what it's looking like. Really, what you're going to always hear is you're going to hear a couple things. You're going to hear the subsidized versus the unsubsidized loans is what you really kind of hear a lot about, right? So not everybody's going to be offered both options. Students who demonstrate a higher financial need are going to be offered the subsidized loans, and students who don't have quite that need level might be offered the unsubsidized. Now, the difference being is the subsidized loans, and once you get that loan money coming in, the government is actually paying the interest on it while the student is in session. So the interest is not accruing. So for that period, it's kind of like 0% interest, right? When the student graduates or is no longer attending the school, basically about 6 months after that is when the money starts coming due and all that starts happening. But if you get the subsidized loans, again, it's a loan for not as quite of a need, but the reality of that is the interest is accruing once that loan goes live. So while the student is attending class and in the program, they might not be paying on that money, but the interest is accruing and it's kind of building, compounding as you go forward. So again, loans is kind of on the back end. You try to do those as minimal as possible. And if you're going for the two, you're really trying to get as much subsidized versus unsubsidized. And I'll also say if you are looking for like private loans, local banks, credit unions, things of that nature also offer loans as well. But again, interest will be accruing on those loans. So if it's offered to you, the subsidized loan is the best way to go going forward with that too. And of course, there's the direct plus loans, like for parents and things of that nature. So again, there are loan options. You're just trying to make this as minimal as possible. And the reality is it's a personal choice, the amount of debt you take on with this. But kind of like a norm of a reasonable amount would be, when the student graduates college, how much money are they going to earn that first year with that first job? And really, you don't want those loan amounts to exceed that first year's salary. You don't want to be in debt your whole life for paying for the schools. You want to try to find that balance as much as possible. So that's kind of a rule of thumb to use, if you will. Again, it's personal choice, and you want to get that as low as possible, obviously. But generally, we kind of recommend less than a year's salary out of college. So we can move on to the next one. So now we're going to kind of move on to the FAFSA and the California DREAM Act. Now, if the California DREAM Act is applicable to you, you would be applying for that. And what I mean by that is basically if undocumented. Otherwise, it's going to be FAFSA. And now going forward, when we're talking about FAFSA, anytime we use FAFSA, we're kind of using DREAM Act interchangeably. So we're kind of referring to both of them as we go forward. So that's where the bulk of your money is going to be coming from, or at least the data is going to be coming from for it, okay? So the application for FAFSA, it's pretty quick and it's pretty easy to do. It is something that you have to renew each year going forward. So the first time takes a little bit longer, and then each time the renewals, it's a little bit quicker. And it's based on the previous year's tax returns, basically. So, okay, we'll talk about that as we go forward. Okay, so as far as the FAFSA California DREAM Act tips, it is live right now. To get priority, we're looking at March 2nd for the. We have March 2nd is for the Cal Grant priority deadline, but really we recommend doing it the earlier the better. And the reason for that is a lot of private institutions, they have pools of money that they'll issue out in their award packages as well. And that is a finite amount of money. So eventually that will run out. And institutions privately will also issue earlier dates as well. December 1st is a common date that we'll see coming forward as well too. So again, we recommend doing it earlier rather than later. That way you know you're getting as much consideration as possible, depending on the university that you're applying to. It is based on the 2020 tax information. And COVID, things are a little bit different too. So I know this came up last year, probably come up this year too. People had changes, right? So maybe there was a loss of income or there was medical issues. Things happened during the COVID period. But the reality is it's still based on the 2020 tax information for that initial FAFSA component. And then if you have other situations, you would contact the financial aid offices at the universities that you're attending, kind of explain and work with them about those changes. But it is based on the 2020 tax information. So the student's going to be completing it, and then a parent will be completing it with them as well. And this is, like I said, something that you're actually going to be refiling or renewing, if you will, every year that you'll be applying for financial aid. First year's a little bit more. It kind of self-propagates after that a little bit, but it's something you do each year.
And
Move on
just
to the
to
next.
re-emphasize, so it's each year the FAFSA for the following academic year opens on October 1st. So when you guys go into the FAFSA, it's for the academic year 2022-23. And it's each year that opens on October 1st. So it is open, yes, right now. We had a few comments in there.
Nice.
Great
Yes.
questions, you guys.
Just make sure you hit the correct year, and then each year it'll just be a renewal. Perfect. All right. So the FAFSA, basically it is done electronically now, which is actually good because it's kind of logic driven in the platform it uses. So as you're answering questions, it's going to move you on to the questions that are more relevant to you. But because it is digital, and they're going to need a signature and a verification, you don't really have that live wet signature so much anymore. They need a digital signature. So the way that they've come to do this is they have created the FSA ID number that you're going to create for yourself to access and to sign, basically. Now, with this being said, is the student has an ID number that is specific to them. It's based on social security number and identification for the students. And then the parent is going to have their own and separate ID number as well. So when you're doing signatures or accesses of things of that nature, that is the number that you're going to be using. If you have other students coming down the line that have been in college, in a year or two after this, you're going to have that same number as the parent, but the new student will have a different number that's unique to them. So again, you kind of go on to the set up your account. Really, when you're doing this account, what you're going to be needing is your social security card. You're going to be entering in that number, and they're going to need your legal name. So you're going to be sure not to use a nickname or anything of that nature. You actually want it to be the name that's on the social security card. And that way it all matches up. There's no slowdowns or hiccups. It's nice and straightforward. And of course, it's going to ask you for a password and your username. Now, when you have that password, though, and we'll kind of talk about this in a second too, you do want to make sure that you save that password and have a good reference point for that. So maybe we can move on to the next slide. Don't lose it. You're going to need this each year that you're doing it. And again, parent has one and the student has their own. And you'll each need those numbers. So, log them in different spots, just keep it accurate, make a file for all your college pieces, because this is something that you will need for the next upcoming few years. So this is, FAFSA.gov. This is kind of what the form looks like to kind of start you off. It'll be straightforward with that process, and we're going to kind of go through what the application looks like. So in our first section, we'll see coming up here. There we go. So it's going to be a little bit of, the about you. And when we say about you, the you and the your is referring to the student in the equation. And so if the student's doing it, it makes sense, blah, blah, blah. If a parent's kind of helping out on that component, just be sure that you're not mixing up the you for you, and that's really the students, because that's all the data that's being entered in. And those initial sections, it's the contact information. So it's who the student is, their phone numbers, their addresses. They're looking for residency establishments, things of that nature. Have they been in California for the past year? If the male, have they registered for the selective service? These are questions in those initial components. And again, just be very aware that this is talking about the student at that point. In the school section, obviously, you know what high school you're in. But what you really want to know is the list of colleges that you're going to be applying to. And the reason is you're going to enter in the colleges you're applying to into this FAFSA account. And that information is going to be transmitted to the colleges that you have listed. Those colleges, if they admit you into it, they're going to put together a financial aid package for you. And it's all going to be derived from those initial information that you submitted in, okay? So with that being said, though, you want to be sure you enter in a California public institution. I'm from back New York. So in my mind, if I'm going to New York, I'm not going to go to California school. Still put in a California school, even if your heart you don't think you're going there, because that will trigger the aid qualifier for you, okay, for California. If you don't do that, it never triggers, and then you won't have that option. So regardless, even if you're not really going there, put in a California public in there just to be sure. In that initial list, it's going to give you 10 colleges to enter in. And basically, like I said, all that information is transmitted to those colleges. If you haven't been, you're doing 15 schools. All right. So you put in the 10 schools. In 3 to 5 days, you're going to get a report that comes back. In that report, it's going to have a list of the schools you sent it to. And basically, that's kind of your confirmation that those schools have received that information and they're going to utilize it if they make you an offer. That's how they're using it. Okay. But if you have that, extra 5 schools or whatever you're doing it, now you go back into your FAFSA because you have that confirmation. You're able to delete those 10 colleges and you're able to add in additional colleges in blocks of 10. Hopefully, you're not going above 20 colleges, but you just kind of keep doing that until you don't need it anymore. But it is always in blocks of 10. If you add a college later, you just add it into your list and the information will be submitted to you. Dependency. All right. So in the eyes of the government, the student is going to be dependent of you for college financials for up to age 24, basically. There are a couple of exceptions, and this is where it kind of indicates in here. If a student is married or they have a dependent of their own, or I believe if they're in the military, things of that nature, that may change those dependency status points. But traditionally and generally speaking, up to the age of 24, in the eyes of the government for these loan purposes, the students are dependent on the parents for this process. All right, then you kind of move into the parent demographics. Again, you're kind of talking about the parent who is filling this in. Some information that you might need is the marital status, how long you've been married, dates of that of the marriage as well. Was the parent or parents in this situation residents of the state of California, or are they new to California? Are there other dependents of the parents as well, too, other siblings in the family as well? And also, is there students in college right now? And that's important too, because maybe a couple of years ago, you had a student who went into college and you didn't qualify for as much money as you thought you would have qualified for. That may be completely different now because you have additional students in college. So the matrix, the equation has changed a little bit, probably in your favor as well too. And again, this is why they do a renewal each year, because people's circumstances change each year, and that's what it's based on. So when you're doing this, you're entering in all those demographic informations, and then they're going to be looking for the hard numbers, right? They want to know the money that you've had, the assets that you've had. So it's going to be based on your tax returns that you filed, and there is an IRS data retrieval tool built into this, which is very convenient. Basically, utilize that tool. I'm using the FAFSA ID for logins, things of that nature, but it's pulling up that information from the files, the documentation that you filed with the government already. Okay. So yeah, so looking at your income, they're looking at your assets, and when they're looking at assets, it might not be your primary residence that you're living in or the house that you're living in because you're actually utilizing those, but it might be a secondary property. If you have a rental property, you have a vacation property, those are going to be listed more as assets versus your primaries. But again, they're using all of this information when they kind of come up with the equation of how much they believe the family should be contributing to the college experience. Student financials, similar to the parents, but maybe not necessary. So we're looking at, was the student working? Did they file taxes? And some students definitely were, and then some weren't. And that's totally normal because it's, a student, but there may not be any really data to enter in it. So when we say the IRS data retrieval tool, that might not be necessary because there may be no data to retrieve. So again, looking at his assets, earnings, things of that nature. If it's appropriate, fantastic. If it's not appropriate, you just indicate it accordingly within the application. And then you come to the sign and submit piece. And remember, this is a contract basically, and it is based on your federal taxes. So be sure to be transparent and honest in all of this. So once you kind of look at your summary and you you agree with everything that you submitted, you confirm everything you submitted, you're agreeing to the terms. And again, in the signature piece, because you're not having a live signature, so you're using that FSA ID number. Again, the parent has their own, the student has their own, and you're both using that to basically electronically sign, verifying the documentation. So that is the FAFSA/California Dream Act component of the equation. And I believe Ms. Prosnick is going to move on to the next section here.
Yes, thank you so much. So, and just so that you know, after you have completed your FAFSA, you can log back into the account so that you can view your application status. Here's a very blurry page of what it looks like after you would have submitted. And then you would, it says whether it has been processed successfully. You can go back in. So as we mentioned earlier, you can only enter in 10 colleges at a time. But after the FAFSA has been processed and you see that confirmation when you go in the portal, or you get that email confirmation that's been processed, it normally takes maybe 3 or 5 days. You will then go back into the FAFSA, click on that update school information so that you can take out the 10 schools that you had before, add your new 10 schools, so that also that information that you've put into the FAFSA is shared to those new schools. If you get a notification that there is some incorrect information, you would log back in. And of course, you can also view the student aid report, the SAR. So once you have submitted the FAFSA, immediately you'll get this sort of page. And again, I apologize, I know that it's a bit blurry, but it's the student aid report confirmation. It also gets emailed to you. So you do get this not just after you submit, but you'll get it emailed as well. And on the student aid report, it'll be the record of everything that you have submitted, but it'll also show your expected family contribution. So this is how much the federal government is saying that based off of your income and the assets that they believe that you can contribute out of pocket to the colleges. You might see if you qualify for a Pell Grant. And in reading this, there's no dollar signs when they mention the expected family contribution. So just notice that it's right up there at the top, but there won't be a dollar sign tied next to it. It could be 0, it could be 10,000, it could be 100,000. That's one of the main numbers that people often look for, just to get an idea as to how things might be moving forward. And then the Pell Grant, down kind of at the bottom of this page here, you'll see in the paragraphs is actually where it indicates that the student in this case is eligible for the Pell Grant up to $6,495. So all of that information is in the SAR. But kind of further explaining that, so when you submit the FAFSA is sent to these 3 different groups of organizations. And if you're completing the DREAM Act application, is just sent to our California Student Aid Commission, and the college is on your list. But the FAFSA is also sent through the government. That's why the federal government is right away able to determine if you qualify for the Pell Grant, and is able to determine if you qualify for any loans. The FAFSA is sent to the California Student Aid Commission, who will then be able to determine if you qualify for the Cal Grant, the Middle Class Scholarship, the Chafee Grant. So if you're a foster youth, you might qualify for that. And it is recommended that about a week after you submit the FAFSA, it's been processed through the federal government. That's about the time period it takes to sync with the California Student Aid Commission. And so you'll want to then go to webgrantsforstudents.com and create an account. All of our district high schools have sent your GPA to the California Student Aid Commission, so you don't have to do that additional form. And as soon as the California Student Aid Commission has that FAFSA information, has verified, you create the account, so everybody's verifying that you are who you say you are, they'll be able to determine and work towards to see if you qualify for the Cal Grant, Middle Class Scholarship, or the Chafee Grant. And then the FAFSA and the DREAM Act applications, also information is also sent to the colleges on your list. And this is important because the colleges are the ones who put together your financial aid letter. So the federal government and the state of California are not independently sending you Pell Grant money or Cal Grant money, but it's actually the colleges who will be collecting all that information, collecting those monies from the government, and putting it in your financial aid letter. The colleges also use the information to determine if you qualify for any additional scholarships, grants, or loans through their organization. So again, it is really important that students complete the FAFSA or the DREAM Act application so that they can be eligible for all of the aid that might be out there. Some colleges, in addition to the FAFSA, may ask and may require, in order to give you a financial aid letter, that you submit a CSS profile. This is mostly private colleges, although some out of California state schools might ask for it as well. So please, it's usually on the admissions webpage where they would talk about whether or not they require the CSS profile. If you are looking at a school that does require the CSS profile, know that they are looking at both 2020 and 2021 financial information. There's a lot more questions that they'll ask for as it relates to your finances and assets. If you're divorced, they'll be looking at both households in most cases. There is also a fee required to submit the CSS profile, although there are waivers available through the College Board, and they might have different deadlines. And so some might be early, similar to the FAFSA for some of those colleges. Some might be after the application deadline, but it would be on the admissions webpage for any of the schools that you might be looking at. And if you go to cssprofile.collegeboard.org, you can get more information about that in addition to the information on the college's webpage. All right, so after these colleges have accepted you, they will be working to put together your financial aid award package so that when they send out your acceptances, hopefully around that same time, they can also give your financial aid letter. These letters will look different at like every university out there, but there is a general format that they follow. So hopefully with most colleges that you're looking at, when you get the letter, it will have the estimated cost of attendance. So that's up there at the top. You can see that it's put together a couple of different items for a total at our fake university here of $38,000. It will also give you a total amount of aid, and usually they do try to separate it into your loan aid and then that free money, so the scholarships, grants, and work study. What you're going to want to do is kind of figure out, okay, what exactly is my money looking at? So what I've done over here is I've seen, okay, I have free money with all my scholarships, not counting the federal work study. I have my 17,000 in this fake example here. And I have my loan money of 7,000. So while they said that my total financial aid package is 28,000, really I would consider it as a 24,800. And that again is because the federal work study, it's an excellent program. It allows for you oftentimes to get particular jobs on campus or maybe jobs at a higher pay rate, but you work in order to get that money. So I do think it's helpful to consider that slightly separate. That's one of the first things that I always do when looking at financial aid letters is I say, let's just take that out so that you mentally are prepared. This, you know, in this case, the $24,000 is really kind of the loan amount that you're immediately going to be able to use right at the beginning of the semester. The next thing that I would recommend that you guys look at is the total build cost. So the estimated cost of attendance in this example is $38,400. Well, the build cost to you is going to be our tuition and fees, which is $24,500, and our room and board, which is $9,400, which gives us a total build cost of $33,900. So it's a little bit different, and you can tell it's about a $5,000 difference. And that is because universities want you to, of course, come to the university, survive with room and board, but more than that, they do want you to enjoy your experience and be able to travel to the university, to be able to go out, get those books and supplies. Where I pay particular attention to that number is sometimes, in this case, like in this example, they may figure that you're anyways paying out of pocket for different items. In other instances, the total amount of financial aid, that blue circle down at the bottom there, may match the estimated cost of attendance. But you might already have a computer. You might figure, you know, you might be going to a university that has it available for students where you don't have to necessarily buy a book, but can always go to a library and have one available to you. You know, you might just not want to pay up front or take out a loan for some of these extra things, the computer, personal travel, books, materials, different supplies. And so if you see in your financial aid package that there is a loan, so let's say that there was that unsubsidized loan for $2,000, you know that it's unsubsidized, so it's already charging interest on you while you're in school, you might consider not necessarily taking that loan and just paying things as they come up. So this is just something that I like to point out to take into consideration, and that as you get those packages in the spring, look at that carefully and just see, okay, what is being covered? Where is my free money? Where are my loans? And are there any things in my package that I don't need? Or, really, do I want to take all of it? Sometimes, particularly with our federal loans, the interest rate is really awesome. And so if you know that you do want to be able to have that availability of funds to get a computer, to be able to travel, certainly go for it. But it's something to just revisit and consider as you get those letters in the spring. The financial aid offices at the colleges are going to be your best friend. Once you are accepted, I would reach out to the financial aid office, see if you can set up an appointment. A lot of things are still virtual, and go over your award letter. Make sure, as I mentioned, a lot of the award letters look very different from the different schools. And so make sure that you are understanding, okay, when we're talking about, the subsidized loan, what does that mean versus the unsubsidized loan? Universities sometimes might suggest a different loan, and so what are those differences? And make sure that you understand all the rates associated with that. If you qualified for a scholarship or a grant, is that something that's going to be renewable? Or is it just your first year? Those are great questions to ask the financial aid office. So they are your best friend, and I would definitely reach out to them. Also, some colleges will have in the spring regular online informational sessions. I know UC Santa Cruz financial aid office was every Wednesday last spring was having open office hours where you could just drop in and ask them questions. So I do encourage you, this is a ways off, it's in the spring, but I do encourage you to take advantage of the financial aid offices and just asking them questions. If your financial situation has changed in 2021, because of course our FAFSA, they're using our 2020 tax returns, it's very, well, it's not uncommon by any means that situations change. And so if you go to the financial aid webpage for the colleges you're applying to, you'll find usually under a forms tab, something about special circumstances, a special circumstances forms, or they might even have a whole page of procedures. Oftentimes submissions of the forms does begin in the spring after you've been accepted. And just be prepared to offer supporting documentations to support your situation. And after they can look at everything that you can have submitted about what is going on, what are the special circumstances, whether it be a lost job or if there's medical situations going on, or there could be a variety of reasons that can certainly play in. They will send an updated financial aid letter to you. Also, I don't have it in my slides here, but kind of on the same note, if you're looking at how much your out-of-pocket expenses are supposed to be, I would contact the financial aid offices and just see, okay, can we set up a payment plan? Are there maybe, if other scholarships or grants that we can be considered for, either as an incoming freshman or even at your later years? There might be things that the financial aid office can really help you with in a variety of ways. So again, they're our best friends. All right, other scholarships. So again, most scholarships and grants, that's our free money, does come from the federal, state, and state governments, as well as your attending colleges, but there are many other scholarships out there. There's some wonderful search engines. I know I have this on my webpage. David, I'm not sure if you have it on.
I have it in the Google Classroom. I'll be putting it back on the webpage as well. Same exact ones though.
Okay. Yeah. So this is a great list. It's kind of interesting. I think they all pretty much pull the information the same way. So I usually tell students, find a search engine that you are very comfortable with and create a profile, and you could probably just stick with that one. Oftentimes they have you create an account, put in information about yourself, and then we'll send you often updates about different scholarships that you can apply for. and you're really looking to, maybe apply for a scholarship every other week, twice a month, once a month moving forward. And hopefully you're going to get like $500 here and $1,000 there, hopefully some nice big ones. But that's usually what you're looking at, is to supplement your financial aid package. Also pay attention at the university you're going to, whether they stack scholarships. A lot of colleges have moved to stacking scholarships, which is nice, which means that if you get an outside scholarship, they won't take away any other aspect of your financial aid package, but they will just put those scholarships on top. But it is something to be aware of, that some colleges will adjust your financial aid package when you bring in other scholarships. Yeah, so going to our resources. So at College Park, we do have the Google Classroom. I didn't have the address for that, or David, how do they access the?
If you go to our webpage, I have it on the webpage on the scholarships, and I will also be emailing it out to all the seniors as well, just as a reminder going forward too.
Excellent. And then for Northgate, I do have a scholarship Instagram. I have a link to that on my webpage. And then also there's a list of scholarships that have both local, regional, and national scholarships you can find in Naviance if you go under the college tab, and then scholarships, where you can find a list there. I would also check out the colleges you're looking at. Right now, it's great to look at the financial aid webpage specifically about freshman scholarships and grants. Or if you are listening in on a rep visit as they come, or maybe you're attending one virtually for a school you're interested in, ask, are freshmen automatically considered for scholarships and grants? In almost like 95% of the cases, you're automatically considered for scholarships, but sometimes there might be additional ones that require an application. Sometimes the colleges will contact you to submit the application after you have submitted your the scholarship application after you submitted your college application. They might contact you. Double check or ask the admissions officers if they have a deadline for you to submit the FAFSA in order to be considered for those maximum amounts. Again, University of Southern California, Boston University, there's some other ones out there that will say, even though our application deadline isn't until January, in order to be qualified for that maximum amount of financial aid, we do want you to submit the FAFSA by December 1st. Same thing with our WUI schools, our Western Undergraduate Exchange School. So that's our universities in the western part of the United States, where you can go to that school and pay about 150% of in-state tuition as opposed to full out-of-state tuition. There might be particular deadlines. So for example, University of Utah would want you to submit the FAFSA by December 1st in order for you to then qualify for that WUI rate. And then if you want to get really ambitious, then you can go to, on the financial aid webpage, start looking at what is available to students outside of that freshman year. There might be departmental scholarships. So if you know coming in as a freshman, because of your GPA, you might automatically qualify for, let's say, a $10,000 $10,000 scholarship, but it's only a one-time thing. Check to see if for the major that you're looking to go into, if there might be other scholarships available to you. And finally, another great way, this isn't scholarships, but a great way to save money and to take the edge off of some of those costs is to become involved in certain campus jobs. Many universities will allow for their resident assistants. So that would be a usually upper level undergraduate student will live and be in charge of the floor. I'm trying to think of a better way. I like blanking on how to describe a resident assistant, an RA, but they're like in charge of the floor. They're the ones who they're wonderful coming into college because, of course, in your dorm, they help with activities. They help keep the peace on there. But oftentimes, if you are an RA, your room and board is covered. So that's a really neat thing to check into. Besides it being a really fun job, it's also a really good way to have that covered. Also, consider working in the admissions office. If you call any admissions office right now and say, hey, I would love to talk to a student and just get an idea as to how the university is, maybe talk to someone in your major. I love talking with the admissions ambassadors, but when you get to that university, you can also be an admissions office ambassador and talk to prospective students, lead campus tours, that sort of thing. And sometimes there are additional scholarships and grants, or even they take off room and board. So that's another job to just consider moving forward.